The EU has been sent a stern warning by Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey, who said now is not the time to pick a fight with the UK on finance. Mr. Bailey urged Brussels to back away from a spat with Britain concerning trade and financial services after Brexit. He accused the bloc of levelling greater demands against London than other partners. That the EU has granted long-term market access for securities clearing houses from the US but not for their UK counterparts even though they comply with the same rules. In the text of a speech he was due to deliver on Wednesday, the banking chief said, the EU has argued it must better understand how the UK intends to amend or alter the rules going forwards. This is a standard that the EU holds no other country to and would, I suspect, not agree to be held to itself. Referring to the EU's demands, he said it is difficult to see beyond one of two ways of interpreting this statement, neither of which stands up to much scrutiny. He added, we have an opportunity to move forward and rebuild our economies, post-COVID, supported by our financial systems. Now is not the time to have a regional argument. He said the UK should not be forced to follow the same rules for financial services as the EU, and agreeing to not change rules in future would be unrealistic, dangerous and inconsistent with practice. In his annual Mansion House speech to the City of London, Mr. Bailey said the UK should also be allowed to change rules independently, and agreeing to only follow EU rules would be rule-taking pure and simple. He added, it is not acceptable when UK rules govern a system 10 times the size of the UK GDP, gross domestic product, and is not the test up to now to assess equivalence. The Bank of England governor also said a low-regulation financial system would not be in the UK's best interests. His words were a slapdown to calls for a Singapore-style regime for banks. He said, let me be clear, none of this means that the UK should or will create a low-regulation, high-risk, anything-goes financial center and system. We have an overwhelming body of evidence that such an approach is not in our own interests, let alone anyone else's. That said, I believe we have a very bright future competing in global financial markets underpinned by strong and effective common global regulatory standards. His warning comes just over a month after the UK exited the Brexit transition period. UK and EU counterparts are negotiating the terms of a Memorandum of Understanding over access for city institutions to European financial markets. Regulators are hoping to have a deal signed by next month. However, Brussels has suggested the UK must follow rules for a number of years without diverging. In his speech, the banking chief pointed out that it was up to regulators to determine which rules can be considered equivalent, as happens in other nations, rather than just following rules to the letter. Asked whether the UK risks being cut off from the EU financial system, Mr. Bailey said, I think that would be a mistake. It raises the cost of finance for everybody, including the citizens of the EU. It will raise the cost of doing business in the EU, so I think it's a mistake. Mr. Bailey was appointed Bank of England governor in December 2019. He took over from Mark Carney in March of last year. Mr. Bailey previously served as chief executive of the Financial Conduct Authority (FCA), the city watchdog.